Hello, my name's Olorotimi Osha. Today is August the 22nd, 2026. I recently looked at the estimates and gross sales of the highest grossing movies of all time, and I found that Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey, true to its trending towards historical massive sales, is now the highest grossing R-rated movie of all times. It surpassed Deadpool and Wolverine, from the X-Men franchise. So Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey is now ranked 21st highest grossing movie of all time. So it finally knocked off Black Panther. Black Panther prior to this was the 21st um, uh, highest grossing film of all time. And, while Christopher Nolan is building all that great momentum, it is a classic, right? It's a 3,000 year reimagining of Homer's The Odyssey. So it's a reimagining of the 3,000 year The Odyssey by Homer. And I'm not going to leave out Spider-Man Brand New Day is now the sixth highest grossing film of all time. It's sold over $2 billion, and it looks like it's moving towards becoming the highest grossing film of all time, and it might eventually knock off Avatar, which has over $2.9 billion in sales, as to make it the highest grossing film of all time. Now, while the Nolan's The Odyssey is doing very well, right, very financially successful, and of course it's great, receiving all the great critical reviews that I know the Titanic did not receive, by the way. The Titanic, also by James Cameron, right? James Cameron is a producer of Avatar. He's a producer of the Titanic as well. He, Titanic didn't receive that, such critical reviews that, or acrimony that Nolan's The Odyssey is receiving today. But the Titanic, in terms of the biggest selling epic of all time, historical epic, it's still the Titanic. But in terms of a classic, right, or an ancient classic, an ancient story, ancient history, the Nolan's Odyssey is coming close, but it still wouldn't match when we reconfigure, right, when we calibrate or recalculate for present dollars, computing inflation, factoring inflation, right. It won't match Cecil B. DeMille's The Ten Commandments, which was produced in 1956. According to Guinness World Records, it's projected that it's the eighth most successful film of all time. And in terms of epics, Gone with the Wind, by the way, is said to still be the best-selling movie, would be the best-selling movie of all time, if it's reconfigured to factor in inflation, right? Gone with the Wind, when it was released ages ago, was the highest grossing film for 25 years. So I guess there are people who will still have it in for the classics. There are different ways to call the classics. When we say classics, there's a study of the classics, that's ancient Greece and ancient Rome. But when we say something is classic as well, we're saying, something's canonical, right? Something, literature that's of high quality. So there's a reason why I'm also talking about Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey, because I'm interested in the classics, right? So I like to talk about American history. I like to talk about American presidents, and part of American history is Hollywood, right? While America did not invent the film, right? Hollywood uses film. Hollywood generates, produces, and markets film, right? Movies. It was the invention of film is historically credited to the French through the Lumiere brothers. That's Auguste and Louis Lumiere, who invented film in 1895. But fast forward, in terms of really pioneering the movies, films, and transforming it into what we know today. America was a pioneer with the production of the jazz singer in 1927 by Warner Brothers Studio, right, in 1927. So they incorporated synchronized dialogue and musical sequences to end the silent film era that the French gave us, right, since 1895. So Hollywood, obviously, they've been a trendsetter in terms of movies, movie going, and the world has copied them. And there's a reason why I'm interested also, because of course I'm an American citizen, but I'm also from Nigeria. I'm Nigerian, and Nigeria is now considered the top 3 biggest producers of films in the world, right? They have their moniker after Hollywood is called Nollywood. And of course there's the Indian Bollywood as well, which is big. And of course China is the second in terms of movie going in the world after the United States. So while sometimes I use this platform to talk about America's declining literacy rates, we should talk about things America still does very well, and that's being a pioneer in Hollywood. And if you notice, most of America's movie sales are not domestic, they're actually international, right? 60%, 55 to 60% of the success of Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey comes from international sales, not domestic sales. So Americans, we need to be very careful in how we fan the flames of xenophobia, right? So we're not we're not as a global capitalist trendsetter, right? We're not, it's counterintuitive. It contradicts our values to be xenophobes, right? And I'm referring to the anti-immigration hysteria. Of course, that's because the immigration system is broken, but we remember that immigrants contributes to this world, and the global world contributes to our financial success. By the way, Christopher Nolan, right, the director of the Odyssey, the successful Odyssey, is British, right? He's an Englishman, right? He's an American. I think he has American citizenship as well now, but he's an immigrant as well. So we see how immigrants have consistently contributed to the financial and creative success of America. Now, there was something that I wanted to talk about, that the fact that Christopher Nolan's reimagining of the Homer classic, The Odyssey, has scored this tremendous financial success, right? Over $1.367 billion, last time I checked, making it the 21st highest best-selling movie of all time already in just over a month of release. Is that a boon for the classics? When I talk about the classics again, that's the study of ancient Greek and Roman civilization and their literature. Well, there are many critics, right, classicists, who don't think so, because if you're getting your study of the Greek classics from Nolan's film The Odyssey, then you're going to be getting a misrepresentation, right? Because I haven't seen the film yet, but I've read tons of reviews and I've seen clips, right? I've seen clips of it. The clips are available online, and the reviews indicate that significant portions of Homer's The Odyssey, right, are excluded. And I've done videos discussing these portions, such as Odysseus' conversation with Polyphemus, the one-eyed Cyclops, son of Poseidon, and where Odysseus tells him his name is nobody. That's very crucial, which demonstrates, Odysseus's wit, his intelligence, his wisdom. So Nolan, in excluding such scenes, he excludes part of Greek zeitgeist, right? Such as their wisdom, right? Their affinity for wisdom or meity, right? And those elements of Greek zeitgeist or civilization that he mentions, right? He projects in the movie. He misinterprets, right? He misrepresents, right? Such as Homecoming. The movie is told in a different light because Odysseus doesn't settle as a king of. It's not reestablished as a king of Ithaca, like the actual book, the Odyssey by the Homers says. But by the way, it's a poem, right? It was later translated. It was an oral poem rendered by a character said to have been Homer, right? Later on, centuries later, it was codified as a book, right? Which we have today, and there's several English translations. I've read the English translations, one by E.V. Rowe that I liked very much, and one by Samuel Butler. But as I was saying, that in the Odyssey by Homer, the Homecoming reestablishes Odysseus as king of Ithaca, right? While in Christopher Nolan's film, the Homecoming is like exile for Odysseus. Odysseus goes on exile from his land with his wife. So it's a reinterpretation, a misinterpretation of what actually happens. So you don't get a true understanding of the Greek culture, the great Greek literature. So now, is this still a masterpiece nonetheless? I think it is, because it shows Nolan's brilliance, because Nolan's been able to tell an American story. It's telling an American story, of a modern American story about war, the exhaustion with war fatigue, PTSD, as we said. PTSD is pervasive today, post-traumatic stress disorder from war. And he's telling it, though, from Homer's lens, using Homer's, you can say maybe from Greek lens, using Homer's characters, Homer's 3,000-year characters, Odysseus, and the title, the Odyssey. But he's told, a movie. It's like a modern remake of Rambo. If you've seen First Blood, Rambo starring Sylvester Stallone, it was a very good movie back then. I'll let you watch it if you haven't seen it. And another masterpiece. It was on war fatigue, right? On war fatigue, PTSD, the blowback from America's numerous wars, and this was sort of what Homer was doing. So Homer does show, Christopher Nolan does show his brilliance, and he's continuing with the trend of being a literary giant or storyteller, because that's what we do with Hollywood, by the way. We continue that trend in storytelling. And just for people who think, watching films or making films in America is counter educational, or it's contrary to education. Well, actually, I just wanted to mention, I don't know if it's good or bad, but in classes I've been in, right, whether it was a class at Columbia, our professors were talking about literature, great literature. They would have us watch, sometimes they'd have us watch a film. They'd show film in class just to interpret a particular scene, to capture a particular scene. Even in law school, this was my experience in law school as well. Professors showed us films, like in my evidence class and other classes. They show us film just to capture something. By the way, in law school, that's a no-brainer, because if you go to a U.S. courtroom today, you see, instead of just using graphs, charts, and pictures, attorneys are able to use videos, body-worn cameras, videos, film as evidence, right, in court. So film is very vital, and while I talk about American culture, I want to just recognize and highlight what America has done significantly in terms of Hollywood and the cinema. One day I'm going to do a video just discussing the history of cinema, the history of film, and back again to Christopher Nolan. Now, does the financial success of a film or a piece of literature necessarily mean that that literature is profound, right, or even widely accepted amongst literary greats? No, not necessarily so. And the reason I'm saying this is because I come from a family of writers. My brother is a uh, known professor, philosopher. I have a brother, and he's also a novelist. He became a university professor to be able to support his writing, right? This is what he told me when we were kids, when I was a kid. And so he writes, but he's not commercial. He's not a commercial writer. And he said it that he doesn't want a lot of people to read his writing because he doesn't create it for the masses, for mass consumption, because he doesn't think everybody's able to take away what is his message. But there are people who are known to be commercial writers. There have been African writers who've criticized Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. That's the Nigerian novelist, right? Who's very prominent. She's in America. She's championed by America, and there are people who say, well, her writing isn't profound. I've read her writing, and I enjoy her writing, but it's not profound. It's commercial, right? It's not. There are many African writers who are profound who don't have similar acclaim, right? And not that I'm bashing her, but this is just an example. I'm using this by way of analogy. And so you can see in her writing that she panders, because what she writes, for instance, any Nigerian living in America could have written it, right? It's not profound. She's been fortunate that she's had the support of major Western institutions, American institutions, the support of Princeton, and especially also with the American tropes, right? The tropes of America, the stereotypes that blacks are not intelligent. So she represents that. She showcases that contrast. That so blacks can read, blacks can write, right? Africans can read, Africans can write. And you've always had, there are people prior to her, people like Toni Morrison, there have been people prior to her, Langston Hughes, black Americans. But remember, Chimamanda, again, she is Nigerian American, right? She's or Igbo American, however she chooses to define herself. She's a new first generation African American, first generation. She's an African migrant in America. So she's perceived in a different way, right? So yes, one can be commercially successful because they're producing work to achieve commercial success. They're pandering, not necessarily producing profound literature, right? With profound art, right? Now, of course, an artist who is profound, right? Who turns out to be to gain, massive commercial success. They would say no, right? But really profound art, can everybody really appreciate profound art? No. By the way, there was something that was so interesting. Like I said, I haven't seen the movie The Odyssey, but something that I've been watching reviews and I've been reading articles on reviews of The Odyssey. And one interesting review that I saw was a guy telling us the story of Homer's The Odyssey from the film of Christopher Nolan, which he saw. And it was a complete misrepresentation, what Homer didn't do. So in that way, because again, Christopher Nolan left out significant parts, right? There's the anthropomorphism where he excludes the gods, right? The Greek gods. They're just talking about the gods, but you don't see their significance, right? You don't see them doing anything. Even the Athena that's portrayed as a person, turns out to be just part of his delusions, his PTSD of a priestess of Athena at the temple of Athena, who was killed, which is he's still traumatized by. So there's a lot of reimagining. There's a lot of reinterpretation done by Christopher Nolan, and in that way, I think if people think, if the audience is coming out thinking, well, they understand Homer's The Odyssey from watching the story of Homer's The Odyssey, from watching Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey, that's a huge misnomer. It's a huge, that's a fallacy. That's not accurate, right? In fact, Christopher Nolan, like I said, from the reviews, from the critics, and from this reviewer who was describing Homer's The Odyssey from the film he watched, it would be a disservice to Homer's The Odyssey, right? It would be a complete disservice. So it's not necessarily a boon. That's Christopher Nolan's financial success is not necessarily a boon for the Greek classicists, right? Unless individuals are motivated to get up and go pick up a book by Homer and read it for themselves. Tough luck. My name is Oluroti Miosha. I'll keep you posted. Thank you.